But, alright, here I go. As you all know, the world is an increasingly dangerous place for teens in the faith, even in America. You have all been persecuted somehow, in some way. You may not have known it, and you may not have thought about it. But the definition of persecution, according to Merriam-Webster, is the condition of being persecuted, of being harassed or annoyed, especially due to your faith, due to your origin, your religion, or your social outlook. Everyone has been persecuted at school. Maybe not for your faith, but picked on because of what you wear, picked on because of being different, and most likely to be picked on because of where you stand socially. You may not think about it, but how many people do you see around school with different ways to dress, different looks? You know they're poorer than you. How many of you have honestly looked down on someone just because you couldn't understand? Yeah, that counts as persecution. Even further, you've been persecuted for your faith. You may not know this, but in high school is the first place that you'll ever get discrimination for your faith. Further, in college, when you get there, people are going to be blunt and in your face and demeaning you for what you believe in. Yeah, it happens. I'm in college. Trust me, you hang out for 5 minutes, you know how the world's going to go. American teens fail to see persecution for their faith. We do, not because we try to, but the fact that we, as Americans, like to call persecution under different names. Discrimination and other easy terms that we all know and that we've all had at some time. To understand persecution as it affects teens, we need to look at localized persecution and on a global scale. Local persecution that influences teen faith is constantly overlooked by teens. Just because teens acting in the faith are persecuted in school, often hushed or told to be silent on stands that they have in the faith. One of the greatest stories that I have is from my own sister. If any of you have had Mrs. Matlock, you know who I'm talking about. One of the discussions that was going on when my sister was in high school was California was about to vote on gay marriages. Yes, homosexuality is an issue, and you will get persecuted for standing up for it. What ended up happening to her was that because she stood up for the faith of one man and one woman to become one person, she was told to shut up and that she was ignorant because she wasn't up with the times. This is persecution in a very base form. Just because you said something and you believed in what you said, you are the person who's been told to go off into a corner. We don't care what you think. Even further, and I hate to say it, is we often are considered weird for expressing our beliefs. If you've ever been in a high school lunchroom, if you've ever seen someone pray, kneel, bow their head, close their eyes, what you may not realize is that people will call them out on that. In my sophomore year, because I do this every time I eat a meal, I bowed my head, closed my eyes, and thanked God for the food that I had. What ended up happening was after I was done, a student from my own class came over to me and said, "There's no place for that in the schools." Yeah, it is that serious. We often have times where we think that it's not persecution, but we're often told it doesn't belong here. One person that you may not know is persecuted and influences your lives daily are your teachers. Thanks to a ruling, the Abington School District versus Shin, most schools now forbid by law through the state every single kind of communication to the faith. How many of you have favorite teachers? How many of you realize that they play a big role in your life? You may not think about it, but outside of your parents, the teachers are the ones who have the most influence on you. What would happen if teachers were allowed to talk about their faith, to be strong in it, and to influence you? Would it call you to be better people? I have to believe so. But even farther than that, as all of you know, we're in an economic crisis. And the major thing right now is having a job. And trust me, the job market is slowly evaporating right now. Hopefully that won't happen very long. But here's the thing. You get persecuted when you sign up for a job, when you try to get hired. Because if you can't work Wednesday nights or Sunday mornings, you may not even be considered. Just because right now companies have to cut back for what they call monetary reasons. But just because you have an obligation or want to be here, you might not get hired. Simply for the fact that you want to be here. The largest thing, even in this, is sometimes people get overworked on those days. When they know that, being teenagers, you're going to want to work, you're going to want to get as much money as possible, because we all know we don't have enough money. Trust me, paying car insurance, doing all that, not going to help. But persecution happens because when people are told to work extra